Hi there, Mike Perez with Mastering the Young Band, MikePerezBand.com. This video is going to talk about the first warm-up from Essential Foundations. You want to use the first warm-up after your students can play the first 5 notes, the first set of that, and they're starting that first 5-note set too. You're starting articulation. That's when you want to start this first warm-up page. Now, what I recommend is that you teach this first warm-up using your instrument starting methods. So for flutes on their head joint, clarinets, their barrel and mouthpiece, and brass players with their mouthpiece and tubes. If you have not seen my articulation video, you're going to watch that on YouTube. It's at Mastering the Young Band. You'll see teaching beginning band or young band articulation. Watch that video so you can see how I teach my beginners how to articulate from the very beginning. Once your students also understand hand and instrument position, percussion, grip, and stroke, and once your beginners can play pretty much all of the first 5 notes set 2, if not that, most of it, that's when you want to start working on this first warm-up. This is a reinforcement of their articulation. Now, that being said, you can also use the first warm-up pages as the introduction to articulation. What you'll see on the first warm-up pages is number 1 is whole notes on a concert F, number 2 is half notes. It's a real methodical and repetitive way of getting your students to understand articulation, how they keep their air and vibration moving, how the tongue just dents that airstream. So you can also use the first warm-up as the way of teaching articulation in tandem with that first 5 notes set 2. With this articulation, so much of this is about consistency, getting your students to articulate without moving their jaw, without doing anything strange with their airflow, their embouchure, being able to articulate and keeping everything pretty still. Now, in the first warm-up, starting on number 9, what you're going to see is this is where brass players can start working on their first partial change, going from their middle partial, concert F, down to low B flat, going to their low concert B flat, that is. And for horns, they'll be going from their G to C, which is really C to F on their concert, but teaching students how to do that partial change. If you have not seen my video on teaching brass players partials, how I teach my beginners partials, make sure you watch that on my YouTube channel at Mastering the Young Band, so you can see how from the beginning, how I teach my beginners to change partials using a combination of air direction as well as speed. Flute players, if you feel like your flute players are ready, you can also optionally have them start working on their head joint, going from their low note on the closed head joint up to their middle note up on their closed head joint. But don't feel like you have to push your flutes into that. Flute players, the first 5 notes and just being able to play with a clear, consistent tone is very challenging. I find that it's not bad to kind of hold your flutes back from some of the octave and register studies until they've developed a little bit more. So don't feel like you have to move your flutes to that head joint, changing in their partial or octave studies. But if you feel they're ready, in number 9, you'll see in the educator score, there's an asterisk saying optional flute head joint changes in there. Now, if you are fortunate enough to have homogeneous classes in your beginning band, you may want to consider skipping numbers 9 through 12 for your woodwinds. I wrote exercises in 9 through 12 for them so they could play along with the brass and full band settings. But if you're not in a full band setting, you might want to consider not really playing those number 9 through 12. That's what those are really written for. Now, your brass classes, you definitely want to do numbers 9 through 12 just to do a lot of repetition of those partial changes for your brass players. And when they work on those partial changes, a couple of things. When you're first starting, don't have them tongue the second note. So when they go from concert F to concert B flat, have them do a slow change. Really have them do a gradual smear down so they can feel that air direction change. If you have them go to an immediate change too quickly, you're going to get D-yaw, and they're going to move their jaw, or they're going to kick it with their throat. And that's not what you want to teach them with these partial changes. You want to teach it to be from air, speed, and direction, as well as the vibration change in their embouchure. So don't have them tongue that second note. Have them do a slow smear for quite a while. And just do numbers 9 and 10. You don't have to jump right to number 11 where they go from the low B flat to the F. That takes more strength. They can do that in a short amount of time, but don't necessarily start them with that. And same thing, do, so their air goes from higher, straight. Spend quite a bit of time not tonguing that second note. Then once your students are really getting strong enough and understand the concept of the partial change, then you can introduce tonguing that second note, and then you especially can start doing exercises 10 and 12 where they articulate ta, 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 ta. And I got to tell you, that 9 through 12, once your brass players can play those really well, they really understand their partials. They're going to just start taking off in their playing because they're going to understand the mechanics of changing notes with those partials. So that's the first warm-up. Another exercise to take a lot of time on. And by the way, as your students start getting better at the first warm-up, don't feel like you have to do all 4 repetitions of each rhythm. You might cut it down to just doing 2 repetitions, or maybe even just playing the column straight down. Don't feel like you have to play the entire thing every time you play.